you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the science of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. By the way, Lane, I see from your book that on Thursday night, when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I have often established that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens. Is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I have not had much experience of it myself. I have only been married once. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't think I'm interested in your own family life, Lane.
No, sir. It's not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I am sure. That will do, Lane, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem, as a class, to have no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary, in good society, to take a slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
Who are these people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours.
Got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire? Yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
Ah, perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all very well. But I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way she flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you said you'd come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why? One may be accepted. It usually is, I believe. Then the excitement's all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If ever I get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They are all especially for my Aunt Augusta.
You have been eating them all the time.
That is quite a different matter. She's my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is too.
My dear fellow, you need not eat it as if you're going to eat at all. You behave as if you are married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
In the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
That is nonsense.
It isn't. It's a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolen is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algie, by Cecily? I don't know anyone with the name of Cecily.
Bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say that you've had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you would let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Oh, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
There is no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
Well, I think it's rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no matter. For now that I look at the inscription inside, I find that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times. And you have no right whatsoever to read what's written inside. It is a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
It's absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. More than half modern culture's based on what one shouldn't read.
I am quite aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing one should talk of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case was a present from someone of the name of Cecily. And you just said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes, a charming old lady she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algie.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily if she's your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall and some aunts are not tall. That is a matter that surely an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt should be exactly like your aunt. That is absurd. For heaven's sake, I can't see this.
But why does your aunt call you her dear uncle? From Little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt, but an aunt, no matter what her size may be, calling her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You have always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as though your name were Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It's perfectly absurd you're saying your name isn't Ernest. It's on your card. Here's one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. I'll keep this as proof that your name is Ernest, if ever you attempt to deny it to me, or to Gwendolen, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come, old boy, tell me the whole thing. I may mention that I've always suspected you of being a Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to inform me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation, and pray, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle from motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I may tell you candidly that the place is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that, my dear fellow. I have Bunburied all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algie, I don't know whether you'll be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in a position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It is one's duty to do so. And as a very high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much to either one's health or one's happiness. In order to get to town, I always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algie, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is never pure and rare and simple. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you're a Bunburyist. You're one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful young brother called Ernest, in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, in order that I may be able to go down to the country whenever I choose. Bunbury's perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight. For I've been really engaged to my Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You're absurdly careless about sending out invitations. Very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. In the first place, I dine there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I'm always treated as a member of the family and sent down with either no woman at all or two. In the third place, I know perfectly well who she will place me next to tonight. She will place me next to Mary Farker, who always flirts with her own husband across a dinner table. That is not very bad. It's not even decent. And that sort of thing's enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It's simply washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunburying. I want to know the rules.
I am not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolen accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any case. Cecily is becoming a little too much interested in him. It is rather a bore. So, I'm going to get rid of Ernest. And I strongly advise you to do the same with with your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you'll be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
That is nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolen, she's the only girl I ever saw in my life that I would marry. I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realise, my dear fellow, that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
For heaven's sake, don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
My dear fellow, it isn't easy to be anything nowadays. Such a lot of beastly competition about. That must be my Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get her out of the way for 10 minutes, in order for you to have an opportunity for proposing to Gwendolen, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It's so shallow.